Ladies and gentlemen, true leadership is not just about holding office, commanding crowds, or delivering speeches. It is about moral authority. It is about the strength of character that guides a leader to do what is right, not what is easy. Moral leadership matters because it sets the tone for society. When leaders uphold principles like honesty, compassion, fairness, and humility, they send a powerful message that these values are not outdated ideals, but essential tools for national unity and long-term success. A country's trajectory often mirrors the character of those who lead it. When leaders act with integrity, the ripple effects are felt in communities, in schools, in homes. People begin to trust more, cooperate more, and hope more. But when leaders abandon moral clarity, it breeds confusion, cynicism, and division. In this age of information overload, where anyone with a platform can shape opinion, the importance of moral leadership becomes even more pronounced. Because moral leadership doesn't sway with public opinion. It is rooted in truth. It speaks not only to what is legal, but to what is just. It reminds us that legality is not always morality, and that being empowered doesn't mean being above ethics. A morally grounded leader doesn't use power to enrich themselves or diminish others. Instead, they use it to lift, to protect, to serve. There comes a time when staying neutral in the face of wrongdoing becomes a betrayal of one's own conscience. That time is now. When values are under attack, when truth is distorted, when disrespect becomes normalized, when cruelty becomes entertainment, then silence is complicity. Leaders must take a stand not based on party, popularity, or polls, but based on principles. And the most effective leaders have always known this. History doesn't remember those who played it safe during moral crises. It remembers those who had the courage to speak up, even when it cost them. When a leader chooses moral clarity over political convenience, they give people something more powerful than promises. They give them trust. And trust is the cornerstone of any functioning society. Without it, institutions crumble, communities fracture, and the idea of progress becomes a myth. People begin to turn against each other, not because they are naturally divided, but because the voice that should unite them has chosen to exploit their fears instead. This is why it is so dangerous when leaders choose to play to the lowest instincts of the public, instead of calling forth the highest. When leadership becomes a performance instead of a calling, citizens suffer. People start to believe that decency is weakness, that cruelty is power, and that facts are negotiable. That belief spreads like wildfire, eroding not just the present, but the future. So what does moral leadership look like in practice? It looks like listening before speaking. It looks like admitting when you're wrong. It looks like telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. It looks like choosing service over ego and unity over division. It means protecting the vulnerable, not mocking them. It means being a steady hand in a storm, not adding fuel to the fire. People want to believe in their leaders. They want to see someone who reflects their better angels, not their darkest impulse. Moral leadership gives them that. It doesn't promise perfection, but it demands accountability. It doesn't seek applause, it seeks results. And in doing so, it sets a powerful example not just for today, but for generations to come. Leadership without morals is dangerous. It may thrive in the short term, but it destroys trust and weakens the fabric of society over time. The only leadership that endures, that truly transforms, is the kind that begins and ends with moral clarity. That is the leadership the world needs. That is the leadership we must choose to follow and to become. Truth is not a matter of opinion. It is not something we bend to suit our narrative or manipulate for advantage. Truth stands on its own, whether acknowledged or not. In leadership, especially in times of division and crisis, the responsibility to uphold truth becomes even more critical. When leaders abandon truth, they do more than just distort reality. They fracture trust, diminish integrity, and unravel the very foundation upon which any democracy is built. We live in a time where misinformation can spread with the click of a button. One false claim can ignite outrage, foster hate, and divide communities. In such a world, the role of truth is not passive. It must be defended, promoted, and practiced with discipline. Leaders who choose to distort facts for convenience or self-interest are not just misinforming the public. They are disrespecting the people they serve. They are making it harder for ordinary citizens to know what to believe, whom to trust, and how to respond. And once that trust is lost, it's incredibly difficult to regain. Distorting the truth may offer temporary political gain, but it comes at a long-term cost. When truth is no longer respected, citizens grow cynical. They begin to assume all leaders lie, that every statement is manipulation, and that sincerity is a thing of the past. This erosion of truth affects not just public discourse. It impacts every institution, from the courts to the press to the classroom. A society that no longer values truth is a society that is vulnerable to collapse from within. Leaders have a duty, not just a choice, to be honest with the people. And this does not mean they must have all the answers or that they never make mistakes. It means they must be transparent about their intentions, willing to admit their errors, and brave enough to correct falsehoods even when it's unpopular. Honesty is not about being perfect. It's about being accountable. Truth requires courage. It's easy to tell people what they want to hear. It's harder to tell them what they need to hear. A leader grounded in truth doesn't shy away from tough conversation. They don't sugarcoat challenges or inflate successes. Instead, they offer clarity, even when the message is hard. They understand that clarity breeds confidence, while deception breeds confusion. This matters profoundly in times of crisis. Whether the issue is public health, the economy, racial justice, or national security, people deserve to know the reality of the situation. Leaders who conceal facts to protect their image or manipulate perception delay solutions and deepen the damage. On the other hand, leaders who trust the people with the truth empower them to act wisely, to stay united, and to rise to the challenge. There is a quiet power in truth. It may not always be the loudest voice in the room, but it is the one that lasts. Lies crumble under scrutiny. Half-truths unravel over time. But truth, spoken with consistency and integrity, builds trust, strengthens communities, and prepares nations to endure even the hardest storms. When we allow truth to be treated as optional, we invite chaos. But when we elevate it, when we insist on it, when we live by it, we create the conditions for peace, for progress, and for prosperity. The real test of leadership is not how well someone performs under praise, but how they behave when they are held accountable. Truth is the standard. It is not flexible. It does not adjust to the moment. It demands to be honored always. That is why truth should never be compromised. Not for pride, not for politics. Politics, the future of any great nation depends on its commitment to truth. It is the light in the darkness, the compass in uncertainty, and the foundation upon which real leadership is built. Civility is often mistaken for weakness in a world where shouting seems to get more attention than speaking with reason. But civility is not about being passive or silent in the face of injustice. It's about choosing strength through respect. It's about having the discipline to disagree without dehumanizing, to push back without tearing down, and to lead without belittling. Belittling in leadership civility is a mark of confidence, not cowardice. It is the ability to stay composed when challenged, to stay focused on purpose over personality, and to stay grounded even in storms of criticism. In today's polarized climate, where outrage is easy and insults travel fast, civility is more necessary than ever. Leaders set the tone for the culture that follows them. When leaders speak with hostility, the people grow divided. When leaders model respect, the people begin to heal. And healing is not weakness. It's the strength that allows a society to keep moving forward despite its scars. Civility is not the absence of conflict. It is the art of handling conflict with dignity. It recognizes that people will always disagree, but those disagreements can be handled with honor. Civil leaders listen to opposing views without mocking them. They recognize the humanity in every person, even those who oppose them. And that recognition, that ability to see the person behind the opinion, is what allows societies to work together for the common good. In contrast, when leaders abandon civility and resort to personal attacks, name-calling, or public humiliation, they do more than hurt feelings. They lower the standards of public discourse. They encourage followers to do the same. They model a version of power that is fueled by intimidation rather than inspiration. And over time, that erodes the values of a nation. It teaches people, especially the young, that volume matters more than wisdom, that aggression wins over cooperation, and that cruelty is acceptable if it's clever. That's not leadership. It's performance, and performance without purpose is just noise. Civility brings purpose back into the conversation. It shifts focus from ego to service, from scoring points to solving problems. It says, I respect your right to disagree, but I will not sacrifice my values to win an argument. That kind of leadership, rooted in principle, patience, and perspective, is what builds enduring trust. Civility is also a strategy for unity. It creates room for real dialogue, not just debates. When people feel respected, they are more likely to listen. When they feel heard, they are more willing to cooperate. But when people are constantly attacked, they shut down. They dig in their heels.
They stop seeing each other as citizens and start seeing each other as enemies.
That's how division grows. Not from difference itself, but from how those differences are handled. This is why true leaders understand the power of their words. Words can inflame or inspire. They can divide or unite. Civil leader uses words to build bridges, not walls. They understand that even strong criticism can be delivered without contempt. And in doing so, they model the very behavior they hope to see in their nation. Civility is a daily choice. It takes strength to remain calm when others are chaotic. It takes discipline to stay respectful when others go low. But in the end, it is civility that holds the door open for progress. Because in a world full of noise, the voice that speaks with calm conviction will always stand out. It will be the voice people remember, not because it was the loudest, but because it carried wisdom, integrity, and hope. So let us never mistake civility for weakness. Let us recognize it for what it truly is. The quiet strength that builds nations, restores trust, and leads with dignity. Let us lead with that strength. Division may win elections, but it cannot build nations. It is a tactic, one that preys on fear, insecurity, and frustration, but it is not a solution. True progress never comes from tearing people apart. It comes from finding ways to bring people together, even when they don't agree on everything. Leaders who rely on division are not offering answers. They're offering distractions. And distractions are dangerous when a nation needs direction. When people are pitted against one another based on race, religion, class, or political belief, it becomes easier to ignore the real issues. It becomes easier to focus on blame instead of responsibility, on conflict instead of cooperation. And while this may create headlines or drive rallies, it does not create the kind of unity necessary to solve real problems. A nation divided is a nation weakened. It's a nation where energy is spent fighting each other instead of fighting for each other. It's a nation where the focus shifts from shared dreams to individual resentments. Division often disguises itself as strength. It wraps itself in patriotism and tough talk and slogans and chants. But real strength doesn't come from making someone else feel small. It comes from lifting others up even when they disagree with you. It comes from saying, well, we're different, but we're in this together. That kind of leadership is harder. It requires more humility, more patience, more listening. But it is the only kind of leadership that lasts. The danger of divisive leadership is that it doesn't just affect political opponents. It affects everyday people. It filters down into workplaces, classrooms, and family dinners. It creates a culture where people feel unsafe to speak, where everyone is suspicious of each other, where bridges are burned before they can ever be built. That's not a society on the rise. That's a society unraveling from within. From within. And make no mistake, division is often a deliberate strategy. When leaders have no solutions, they create enemies. When they have no plan, they manufacture chaos. It's easier to rally a crowd against something than to rally them for something. But that ease comes at a cost. Because while people are busy fighting each other, problems like poverty, inequality, climate change, education, and healthcare remain unsolved. Those who suffer the most are not the loudest voices on social media or in the news. They are the ones who are too tired. It is too hurt to speak up. Real leadership rejects the easy path of division. It says, let's face the truth together. Let's find common ground. It doesn't mean we'll always agree. It doesn't mean we have to pretend differences don't exist. That does mean we choose dialogue over demonization. It means we choose to listen before we judge. It means we hold on to our values without letting go of our humanity. Unity is not naive. It is necessary. It is the foundation for every great movement in history. Civil rights, labor rights, women's rights, all of them moved forward because people came together across lines of difference. They focused not on what set them apart, but on what brought them together. A vision of justice, dignity, and opportunity for all. So when we hear leaders trying to divide us, we must ask, what are they trying to hide? What are they afraid of? Because the truth is, united people are powerful people. When citizens are united, they demand better. They vote better. They vote better. And that is what real change looks like. Division may stir emotions, but unity moves mountains. And we are a nation that still has mountains to move. Let's not waste our strength fighting each other. Let's channel it toward building something worthy of the people, worthy of the future, and worthy of the truth. And worthy of the truth. Democracy is not a self-sustaining machine. It is not something that, once established, runs smoothly on autopilot. It is a living, breathing system that depends entirely on the participation, awareness, and vigilance of the people it serves. When citizens grow complacent, when they stop asking questions, when they stop holding leaders accountable, when they stop voting, democracy begins to wither. It doesn't collapse in a single moment. It erodes quietly, steadily, and sometimes almost invisibly, until what once felt permanent becomes fragile. Vigilance in a democracy means more than just watching the news or sharing opinions. It means actively paying attention to the forces that influence power. It means questioning not only what is said, but what is left unsaid. It means understanding how laws are made, how institutions function, and how leadership affects everyday life. It requires an informed citizenry, not just a loud one, because volume without knowledge is just noise. But knowledge, when paired with courage, becomes power. History has shown that democratic backsliding doesn't begin with tanks in the streets. It begins with the slow normalization of corruption, of unchecked authority, of silence in the face of abuse. It begins when leaders stop answering hard questions, when institutions are weakened for convenience, and when the people begin to think their voices no longer matter. That is when democracy is in danger, not because of one person, but because of a collective shrug from those who could have spoken up but didn't. The idea that it could never happen here is perhaps the most dangerous belief a free society can hold. Because the truth is, no democracy is immune to decay. The safeguards of freedom, free press, independent courts, equal rights must be defended constantly. They are not gifts, they are responsibilities. And they rely on the people to care enough to protect them. Being vigilant does not mean being paranoid. It means being awake. It means paying attention to patterns, recognizing when rhetoric crosses the line from bold to dangerous, and when policies prioritize power over principle. It means remembering that democracy is not just about elections. It's about fairness, transparency, and accountability every day of the year. Leaders who seek to exploit democracy often do so slowly and strategically. They chip away at norms, discredit dissent, and flood the public with misinformation. They frame truth as opinion and opinion as truth. And they rely on the people being too distracted, too discouraged, or too divided to notice. That's why vigilance is not optional, it is essential. Because every time we choose to look away, we give room for abuse to grow. But vigilance also includes hope. It means believing that the system can work, that change is possible, and that individuals still matter. It means using your voice not just to complain, but to contribute. Whether that's by voting, organizing, educating others, or simply staying informed, every action counts. Democracy is built in small, everyday decisions just as much as in grand historical moments. Young people in particular have a vital role to play. They bring fresh energy, bold ideas, and an unshakable sense of justice. But they must not fall into the trap of thinking the system is too broken to fix. The system only breaks when the people stop caring. And the moment we stop believing we have power is the moment we truly lose it. So stay awake. Ask questions, challenge narratives, read deeply, speak up, vote, protest, engage. Because democracy is not a given, it is a choice we make. And the future of that democracy depends not on any one leader, but on the millions of people who refuse to be silent, who refuse to settle, and who refuse to let freedom slip away unnoticed. Power is one of the greatest tests of a person's character. It reveals what someone truly values, whether they seek to serve others or serve themselves, whether they build with their influence or destroy with it. Leadership, when driven by ego or fear, can quickly devolve into abuse. But when power is used with humility, with compassion, and with responsibility, it becomes a tool for transformation, not domination. The danger lies in forgetting that power is not permanent. It is a trust granted by the people and taken away by the people. It is never truly owned. And because it is temporary, it must be used wisely. Leaders who believe power gives them immunity from criticism or freedom from accountability are already headed down a dangerous path. Because the purpose of power is not to escape the rules, but to uphold them more fiercely than anyone else. A leader should not ask, "What can I get away with?" They should ask, "What is the right thing to do?" Power without responsibility is a recipe for injustice. It turns leadership into a performance, where appearances matter more than impact and self-promotion overshadows public service. It becomes more about controlling the message than telling the truth, more about silencing opponents than listening to it. And in this state, leadership no longer uplifts. It oppresses. It oppresses. It creates fear, fuels division, and damages the very people it is supposed to protect. But power handled with care is different. It listens more than it speaks. It admits fault instead of denying it. It chooses long-term progress over short-term applause. A responsible leader doesn't surround themselves with yes men or punish those who disagree. They welcome diverse voices because they know that better decisions come from collaboration, not control. They don't hoard credit, they share it. They don't run from hard questions. They face them. Leadership is not about making headlines, it's about making sacrifice. True leaders understand that the privilege to lead comes with the burden of being held to a higher standard. They do not seek praise, they seek purpose. They are less concerned with being liked and more concerned with being useful. And most importantly, they remember who they work for, the people. There is strength in restraint, the ability to stay calm in the face of provocation, to use power to then ignite it is what separates real leaders from pretenders. Anyone can act tough, anyone can act tough, anyone can bark orders. Restraint is not weakness. It is the deepest form of strength because it shows that the leader is not ruled by emotion but guided by principle. When power is used responsibly, it creates a ripple effect. It inspires others to lead with integrity. It rebuilds trust in systems and institutions. It reminds citizens that leadership is not about superiority, it's about service. And in times of division, it becomes the example that people can rally around, the calm voice in the storm. A society rises or falls on how its leaders use power. When that power is misused, the damage can last for generations. But when it is used with care, it can heal wounds, bridge divides, and build a legacy of hope. Responsible power doesn't just protect today, it prepares the ground for a better tomorrow. So to those who lead or seek to lead, remember the weight of what you carry. Power is not a crown, it is a responsibility. Use it with care. Use it with courage. Use it to serve, to protect, and to elevate the people who place their trust in you. Because the highest form of leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of what matters most. The future doesn't belong to those who wait for change. It belongs to those who create it. And those creators are not always in positions of power or fame. Often they are the ordinary citizens who decide to care. They are the young people who choose to vote, the workers who organize, the students who speak out, the parents who teach their children to stand for justice. The engaged are the ones who move the needle of progress, even when the world tells them they can't. Engagement is the lifeblood of a thriving democracy and a healthy society. It is the force that keeps institutions accountable, ideas evolving, and communities alive with possibility. Yet so often, people underestimate the value of their own voice. They believe change is only made by the powerful or the wealthy or those with titles in front of their names. But history tells a different story. Progress has always been driven by those who chose to act rather than accept, to participate rather than passively observe. Being engaged means refusing to accept things as they are simply because they've always been that way. It means questioning policies that harm others. It means staying informed even when the news is uncomfortable. It means showing up at the ballot box, at the town hall, at the protest, at the community meeting. And perhaps most importantly, it means listening to different voices, to uncomfortable truths, and to the needs of others beyond your own. Change doesn't require perfection. It requires participation. You don't need to have all the answers to get involved. You don't need to be an expert or a public figure. All you need is the willingness to care and the courage to act on that care. Even small actions like starting a conversation, signing a petition, mentoring someone younger, or challenging injustice in your everyday environment can create ripple effects that go farther than you imagine. And yet, too many people disengage because they feel overwhelmed or discouraged. They look at the magnitude of the problems, racism, inequality, climate change, corruption, and they feel powerless. But what they fail to see is that systems do not change overnight. They change when more and more people decide that the status quo is no longer acceptable. And when enough people decide that, the system has no choice but to shift. Engagement is not just for crises. It is a daily practice. It's how we raise the standards of leadership. It's how we protect hard-won rights and expand them to those still waiting for justice. It's how we ensure that the next generation inherits not just freedom, but a framework for using that freedom responsibly. And every time a person chooses to engage, they're making a statement that their voice matters, that their future is worth fighting for. And that leadership is not confined to podiums, it belongs to the people. Leadership is not a position, it is a mindset. It is about seeing a problem and saying, I will not ignore this. It's about inspiring others through action, not just words. And when ordinary people lead in their own communities, they not only solve problems, they create momentum. Momentum that builds movements. Movements that change the course of history. The future belongs to the engaged because engagement is the engine of hope. It is what transforms frustration into focus, anger into advocacy, pain into purpose. And in a world that often tells us to look out only for ourselves, engagement is the boldest form of resistance. It says, I still believe in something better, and I'm willing to work for it. So don't wait for change. Don't look around for leaders, look within and rise. Because the future will be shaped not by the loudest voices, but by the most committed hearts. Let that heart be yours.